Third, there was a commitment to developing the leadership needed to organize effectively on a large scale, not relying on new media using new media, but not mythologizing it, as if people are just by magic going to sort of organize themselves out there. It required recognizing that the foundation of a successful organizing program is skilled, motivated, creative leadership on the ground. You know, there's a difference between carpenters and tools. And I think we sort of get confused about that a little bit when we talk about the wonders of new media. You know, the best hammer in the world does not build a house. It takes a carpenter to build a house, to imagine it, to put it together. Now, our interest as a campaign was to provide the best possible hammers to the best possible carpenters. And by putting the two together, find our way to new ways of good old organizing, but taking advantage of the capacity that the new media and new technology and new tools can offer us. But getting to scale meant, not by magic, it meant creating a way that people trained could train others, who could then train others, who could then train others. It meant creating a structure in which novices could learn, apprentices could develop, journeymen could flourish, and masters could teach. The very long primary season created the opportunity for that. People started off as an organizer in some town in Iowa, and they wound up running half a state in the general election. You know, two of my former students, Jeremy Bird, was the Ohio campaign director. He turned 30 in the middle of the Ohio general election. His friend Buffy, who ran Missouri, turned 31. It was a leadership school, because all these opportunities were created for growth, mentoring, learning, and development. And look, formal training is really important. We designed these Camp Obamas where we introduced everybody to the basic tools needed to be effective organizers and leaders. But without the opportunity to learn by doing, to learn with coaching and mentoring and support, the mechanism never would have been built the way it did. And so that's the third point I wanted to make: a story of hope, strategic necessity, and a commitment to developing leadership. So now, what were the 5 practices? Well, our approach to leadership was based on this definition. Leadership is accepting responsibility to enable others to achieve purpose in the face of uncertainty. All right, let me do that again. Accepting responsibility to enable others, not to be a shining star in the universe illuminating everyone with your brilliance, to enable others to achieve purpose in the face of uncertainty. You know, when everything's just going according to the way it always was, what do you need leadership for? It's just habit. Where you need leadership is change. It's what's different. It's what's new. It's a creative and adaptive art, leadership is. And so within that, we sort of came to teach leadership as about recruiting and developing leadership, building community around leadership, building power from the resources of community. And we did it in 5 ways. The first one was recognizing that organizing is at its best when it's rooted in bringing people together around shared values. Values-based organizing, which is what we did in this campaign, is a little different than issue-based organizing because it invites people to escape their issue silos. You know, I've done work in campaigns where there have been bird people and fish people and tree people. And I don't mean to criticize environmental movement, but there is a way in which excessive issue focus fragments us rather than bringing us together. And in this campaign, by focusing on the values that brought us together, our diversity then, instead of becoming an obstacle, becomes an asset. And that's what we were able to achieve. Because values are experienced emotionally, they are communicated through narrative. Because it is through narrative, it is through story that we learn to make choices in how to respond to the challenges of an uncertain world, as individuals, as communities, as nations. In other words, our stories are not just little frills or tokens. Our stories are where we learn the wisdom to be choiceful human beings, how to draw the hope over fear, how to draw empathy over alienation, how to find faith in ourselves over doubt in ourselves that it takes in order to confront, challenge, and uncertainty. Our stories teach wisdom. Our stories teach us wisdom. And stories are what bring the values of a community alive. And so the first training, when you came to Camp Obana, people thought, I need to learn Barack's story. We said, no, you don't learn Barack's story. I need to learn 500 policy positions. No, you don't. What's the first thing you need to learn? You need to learn how to tell your own story. You need to learn to tell why you're here. Why are you committed? Why do you support this? And then you need to learn how to listen to the other person's story to tell you why they care and what's at stake in their life. And then together you make from a story of self a story of us, a shared story. And out of that shared story, you call alive the values that move us and that require us to face the challenges to those values that are all around. And that's the story of now. That is the story of now. You go from a self to an us to a now. Unless you think that's kind of new, the first time I ever saw it was, or read about it, was Moses' confrontation. Well, when Moses stepped off the path and saw that burning bush, and a voice comes out, or whatever happened, and the voice says, Moses, and what's the first question Moses asks when he's called? He says, why me? The first question, why me? First question you have to ask. If you're going to convince other people, you got to be able to put into words, why you? Next question he asks is, who are these people, and what have I got to do with them, and what do you have to do with them? And the third question he asks, couldn't this wait a little bit? And God begins to negotiate with him then and offers him a brother and a staff and whatnot. The point is that this storytelling is not a frill. It is a way to bring values back into politics and to move from the politics of marketing to the politics of relationship. It is a relational politics that we need back. And that's the second point. The second thing everybody learned was how to build relationships. Now, people say, oh, I know how to build relationships. Yeah, well, we all have experience, I hope, with relationships of one kind or another. But purposeful and intentional relationship building is a fundamental organizing skill. It is not convincing you to sign my petition. It is not convincing you to give me your money. It is engaging you in a conversation through which together we agree to commit to working together on behalf of common interests, shared interests, and agree to pool our resources to do that. That's what relationship building is in organizing. See, the process of association goes far beyond aggregation. In other words, putting a bunch of individuals together and say all these individuals think that is not the same thing as people getting into relationship with one another, learning from one another, finding their commonalities, committing to one another, and that is where the glue comes from that creates the social capital, what my colleague Bob Putnam calls the social capital, that sustains volunteers, that builds a movement, that creates trust, that becomes a source of energy for building a movement and a successful campaign.